Dapper Don Podcast. Dapper Don Podcast. This is your boy Dapper Don Diggs.
First thing I want to jump into it with, I don't even want to waste your time. The first thing I want to jump in and talk to you about is the new Mortal Kombat movie. Jeez Louise. They stunk up the place. I knew what would happen. And I said it. I said in all the trailers, they're only showing me the Sub-Zero and Scorpion fight. I'm like, and when Sub-Zero freezes the bullet when Jack shoot it. So here's a spoiler alert, you know. I don't really know if I can spoil too much for you, bro. They fought the bad guys. I mean, there wasn't really a lot. Here's my biggest problem. Here's was my biggest problem. One, it was rated R. It was rated R for no reason at all. Kano was funny. Kano was hilarious. He was a lot better. Whoever they had acting for him definitely has a future, because he was very funny, very charismatic. It was very lighthearted. You could tell, kind of like, you know how Iron Man was. It was, even in serious moments, it would come with somebody who would bring a lighthearted conversation. So that was good. The character development, I really like where they took it. So ideally, spoiler alert, so at least you heard. If you were born with this marking, that means you are the chosen one. Now, you can kill somebody and take their marking, but if you don't have the marking, you can't be a chosen one. So basically, you can't have a superpower if you don't have a marking. So it starts off, you see Scorpion's life and who he was. I don't know how true this is to the original, because I always thought like Scorpion was a bad guy just like Sub-Zero. If anything, I kind of thought Sub-Zero was a good guy. Bust my bubble, huh? But because usually the ice guy is always the good guy, right? Like you think X-Men, the Iceman was always the good guy. Since when was the guy who spit hellfire out of his mouth the good guy? But that's what the case was. That's what it was, man. It started also, you see, his whole backstory. Then it goes to this cage fighter. This cage fighter was a new character, somebody we didn't know, and this is the protagonist. So that's super dope that they actually decided to start from scratch. Because I said this about Marvel, and why I think Marvel has a head start over DC is because it's easier to sell me a superhero I'm not sold on, apparently. It's just easier to sell me a superhero I haven't heard this story yet. And that's exactly what they did. They took a risky jump by not making Liu Kang the main character, because that's our guy, right? Liu Kang is our guy. The dragon is a symbol. He controls the dragon. Like he's our guy. They just completely went for something different. So without giving it away, because I know a lot of y'all haven't seen it, you may not have HBO Max, you might not have, whatever. But I'm going to tell you this much. I think they tried to tell us the background, the backstory, instead of showing us. So, Sonya and Jax, they have a relationship already. They don't really show that. They just tell us about it. Cole's upbringing, they just tell us about it. I believe one of the reasons why this is because of COVID. Because when you look at the scenes, there's never more than 10 people in the shot. Even when they're fighting downtown in the middle of the city. In the middle of the city and fighting, you do not see more than 10 people. I do believe this has everything to do with COVID. The cage fight scene is about the only crowded thing you see. But for the most part, it's very spaced out. It's like, the actors were socially distancing, honestly, if I'm going to be honest with you. And this just goes to show how COVID can ruin something, man. And they tried to make a blockbuster in the middle of the pandemic. I can't blame them. What they had to do is set the groundwork, right? If you're going to start, because my girlfriend said she read up and found out that there was a backstory. That they're going to do 3 more, and I think Johnny Cage get a standalone. So it looks like everybody's in the superhero business. And luckily for you, Mortal Kombat is one of the best superheroes. Well, not superheroes, but fighters, anyway. One of the best fighters, period. Because it was kind of like born in my generation, so we kind of remember it. I think what they tried to do was tell us what happened. I think they got to show us what happened. Maybe it needs to be after pandemic, but I want to see when Jax gets his mark. I want to see Liu Kang's upbringing, even if it's just a little, when he's telling a story, it just flashed back to him maybe because he was born like in some foster care orphanage or something. Him running through the slums in China or whatever, and him being adopted by Raiden, whatever the story happens, however that plays out, just some little flashbacks. I think little small flashbacks would have been dope, but I don't know if they didn't have the budget or they didn't have the time or they didn't have the ability to be able to get a bunch of people together in one place like that. But I would have loved to seen the exploration. I would have loved to seen the backstory play out. And this is what I was telling my girlfriend. When you do origin stories, man, you gotta bite the bullet on the first one. You look at Captain America, bit the bullet. You gotta bite the bullet on the origin story. It's gonna be slower. You're gonna, let everybody know what's going on. Because certain things transpired that I'm not gonna tell you about because it's still new. But certain things transpired and I didn't care that it happened. Like when the death of a main character happens or a prominent supporting character, you should care. I just didn't feel attached to any of these characters. The only thing it was like, oh, I remember that character. It was cool. It was cool. But, everybody's a critic. Whatever. It was decent. The fighting was decent. The fighting was certainly decent. It was definitely a good choreographed fight. I was watching something on YouTube, man. They was talking about why stunt coordinators don't get an Oscar. I didn't know that. I thought, which they make a good point. How don't they get an Oscar? Like, if you're the stunt double, you're half of the character. Half of what we watch is you getting slanged through a piece of glass, you getting drop kicked. Like, how don't the stunt double get the Grammy? Not the Grammy, the Oscar. Because it's funny, because you can write a song, and the song plays in the background while the actor is acting, and you can win an Oscar. So how is the people doing the score for the music gets the Oscar, but the stunt double doesn't? So they want the stunt coordinator to win. That's kind of like the stunt double's director. They kind of design all the action, all the high-pack stuff you see. Now, I don't know, like, if Michael Bay does it himself, because they always say Michael Bay loves a good explosion. So I don't know if that includes in stunt coordination, but they say they want the category to be called best action design, because that's what they feel like they're doing. They're designing the actual action. And I mean, who am I to tell you otherwise? They showed you behind the scenes. They showed you how, like, they put the wire on them. Like, let's say somebody gets tossed across the whatever the room by a monster. They showed you how that happened, man. It's some risky stuff too, cause you getting slammed. I thought like there'll be like something to catch you, or like you get tossed through the glass. It's fake glass. No, that's real glass they get tossed through. And what they do, here's what the video showed me. I'm gonna share the knowledge with you. What happens is the glass doesn't break by you just getting tossed against it, cause this is pretty strong glass. So what they do is they toss the actor or the stunt double through the glass, and at the very moment they hit the glass, they set off an explosion that shatters the glass. So technically, you're not just getting thrown through glass, you're getting thrown through an explosion and broken glass. But the glass, the way it breaks is into like little harmless, I don't know, little balls, whatever. So I guess that's the bright side to it. And I guess it's completely like physically harmless. But it's glass though, so it's still strong. It's still real glass. You're still getting tossed through some stuff. You can still get hurt. That's why they demand there be a stunt double on set. So it's super crazy. They definitely deserve an Oscar. That reminds me, you remember the movie that had the Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt? Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Brad Pitt was the stunt double. I just brought that up. Nothing serious. Just made me think about it. Maybe Quentin Tarantino is on board with them getting an Oscar. But anyway, speaking of fighting, speaking of stunning and fighting, let's talk about Floyd Mayweather and Jake Paul.